When your boss asked about your bonds and you didn't even know you were supposed to get one. This video isn't just for use. My mom works in an office, so I know how it all goes. The story isn't made up, it's a reflection of what real people go through every year. All company names and details have been changed, but the emotions are real. The goal is for you to recognize yourself and not repeat other people's mistakes.
I knew something was off the second he raised that damn champagne glass and smirked across the ballroom like we were all his obedient little elves. The place reeked of expensive liquor and fake compliments, glitter stuck to people's shoes, and someone had hired a guy in a velvet suit to play Christmas songs on a baby grand piano like this was some upscale Hallmark movie. But none of that mattered the moment my boss, Steve, with his freshly whitened veneers and a voice like microwaved arrogance, lifted his glass, locked eyes with me from across the room, and yelled over the music, "So, did you get your 7,500 bonus?" Everything stopped. Conversations around me blurred into white noise, the lights dimmed just enough to feel like a spotlight had swung my way. My fingers tightened around my glass. I blinked. "No," I said too calmly, too clearly. Nothing showed up. His face fell for half a beat before he laughed, like I'd just made the world's driest joke. But I wasn't smiling. I pulled my phone out right there under the flickering snowflake decorations, opened my banking app, and held it up. No deposit, no pending, no trace. Across the room, Rachel from HR, perfect blowout, red dress that probably cost more than my rent, caught a glimpse of my screen. Her lips were mid-laugh when they flattened. Then she looked away like I was suddenly contagious. Before we go any further, if you're still listening and haven't hit subscribe yet, now's the time. 97% of you never do, and it really helps the team keep telling stories like this. So if you're into quiet payback, corporate drama, and receipts that hit like a freight train, smash that like and subscribe. Now, back to the party where things were about to get real frosty. I slipped my phone back into my bag like I was sheathing a weapon. The music felt louder now, as if trying to drown out the thrum in my ears. Steve had already turned back to the crowd, clinking glasses with people who never noticed when they were being stepped on. I stood there for another full minute, pretending to sip champagne, pretending my world hadn't just cracked like a cheap ornament. I wasn't drunk. I hadn't touched anything stronger than ginger ale all night because something in my gut told me to stay sharp. Good thing, too. I walked toward the exit with my coat half on, heels echoing on the tile, barely hearing the receptionist ask if I was okay. I think I mumbled something about a headache, but my mind was already racing through the files on my home laptop, the pay stubs I'd saved, the performance reviews, the offer letter with the clause. My bonus wasn't a gift. It was written in ink, a line in my contract tucked under annual discretionary bonus, promising a minimum of $7,500 with an exceptional performance rating. And mine? Mine was marked exceptional so many times it felt like a glitch in the Matrix. I'd busted my ass on that Q4 project, leading a cross-team initiative that saved them over $230,000 in logistics errors. And now I was the only one in my department without a deposit? I didn't go home angry. I went home cold, the kind of cold that starts in your ribs and spreads slow, deliberate, like the way you breathe when you're about to walk into a courtroom. I sat down at my desk, kicked off my heels, and opened my work folder. Every document I'd ever saved, printed, archived, there it all was, glowing on my screen like a truth bomb waiting to detonate. At 11:42 p.m., I pulled my most recent payroll notice. There was my name. There was the bonus, processed, initiated on December 14th. But it never cleared. I cross-referenced the routing number with my records. My actual routing number ended in 48. The one on this form ended in 62, 2 digits. 2 digits meant someone rerouted it. This wasn't a system glitch. This was human. And not just anyone. The file had a digital signature. I zoomed in. There it was. Override approved, M. Crane. The CFO. I didn't breathe for a full 10 seconds. Then I leaned back and whispered to no one, "Gotcha." This wasn't about money anymore. It was about trust. And someone just declared war with a smile and a champagne flute. I didn't sleep that night, not because I was upset, but because my brain had switched into something sharper than anger. There's a place you go when your trust gets violated at the molecular level, and it's not rage, it's clarity. Pure, surgical clarity. I sat at my desk, my laptop glowing in the dark like it knew what was coming. I opened everything: offer letter, payroll stubs, performance reviews. I already knew what they said, but I needed the ink, the headers, the signatures. I needed the bones in place before I went hunting for blood. Clause 4.3 of my contract. Employee shall receive an annual discretionary bonus, not less than $7,500, subject to an exceptional performance rating. My 2023 review, stamped with a literal gold star by Steve during our year-end wrap-up meeting. I still had the follow-up email where he said, "You're the glue, Michelle. We'd be lost without you." Well, apparently they found their way just fine, right to someone else's routing number. I wasn't content with screenshots. I remote logged into the payroll dashboard, an old habit from my time in operations, and pulled the Q4 disbursement report. Columns of names, numbers, bonuses. My name was there. Bonus approved, bonus initiated. But the final routing number, wrong. 2 digits off at the end. Not close enough to be a typo. Too specific. I ran a macro that traced that routing number back through our vendor system. It pinged to a temporary holding account tied to a company expense card, assigned to M. Crane, Michael Goddamn Crane, our CFO. The same man who always gave me backhanded compliments like, "You've got a real talent for making spreadsheets pretty," and who once asked me to take minutes in a meeting I was leading. The kind of guy who drank the fancy whiskey at board meetings but never chipped in for Secret Santa. That guy rerouted my bonus. I stared at the screen, my hands resting on the keyboard, steady. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just whispered, "So that's how it's gonna be." I opened a new folder on my desktop, named it Q4 Compensation Anomaly. No fluff, just facts. I saved the payroll report, the routing history, my performance review, the signed clause from my contract. Then I opened the PDF from the payroll platform again, this time scanning for admin tags. There it was. A digital flag. Override approval. Manual entry timestamp. Dec 14/11/17 a.m. user M. Crane FO. That told me everything I needed. The override wasn't some quirky glitch or clerical hiccup. It was typed, manually, with full authorization logged. I printed it, hole punched it, slipped it behind a plastic sheet protector like I was building a case file for court. Because maybe I was. I wasn't plotting revenge, not yet. This wasn't some movie with sugar glass windows and shouting matches in parking garages. This was slow, methodical, strategic. I wasn't going to explode. I was going to expose. I ran one more check, confirming everyone else's bonus had cleared. Sent a few casual texts to teammates. Every single one confirmed. They got theirs. Steve even handed Marissa her bonus check personally, with a wink and a "don't spend it all on your cats." Classic. By the time the sun started bleeding through the slats of my blinds, I was done compiling the evidence. I tucked it all into a blue binder. Labeled it like I would any other operations issue. Internal disbursement irregularity, Q4. I even added a table of contents, because if there's one thing I've learned in corporate life, it's that no one argues with a numbered list and a cross-referenced appendix. Then I dressed for work like it was any other Monday. Same black slacks, same boots, same watch, but now I had armor. Because the truth? The numbers didn't lie. People did. The trick is not to flinch, not even a little. Not when your bonus gets stolen, not when the CFO hijacks your routing number like it's some victimless prank, and especially not when you're about to slip a folder into the compliance office that could shatter half the executive floor. I arrived at 8:14 a.m., same time I always did, down to the minute. Security buzzed me through the glass doors. Nobody batted an eye, because why would they? I looked exactly the same. I even wore the same maroon blazer I'd worn to last year's compliance training, because some part of me enjoyed the irony. The envelope wasn't flashy, just standard manila, sealed tight. Inside, clean, precise documentation. The bonus disbursement logs, my contract clause, the routing mismatch, the internal audit trail with the override timestamp, and the pièce de résistance, a printed copy of the override request email signed off by M. Crane with his usual smarmy, "let me know if you have any questions" sign off. I didn't include any accusations, not a single word more than necessary. Just a sticky note on the front that said, "requesting audit clarity before year-end close, MC." I used my initials, same as always. Consistency, professionalism, no emotional leakage. And then I dropped it off, casually, like I was handing off printer paper. Janice, the compliance officer, barely looked up when I placed it in her inbox. She was mid-call, probably sorting out some nonsense about petty cash discrepancies or travel reimbursements. But I saw her eyes flicker when she spotted the CC field. Board Risk Oversight Committee, for record. She didn't say a word, but her pen paused. That's all I needed. I walked straight to the break room after that. Poured myself burnt coffee from the communal pot, said good morning to Travis from finance like nothing was happening, like I hadn't just lit a corporate fuse that would burn silently under the floorboards until the detonation hit someone's corner office. Because this wasn't about blowing things up. This was about letting the system eat its own. I slid into the 9 a.m. department sync-up meeting, took my usual seat, and flipped open my notes. Steve did his usual routine, talked about Q1 goals, said something tone-deaf about making sure everyone feels valued, while I stared at his Rolex and wondered how many bonuses he skimmed off for that. Crane didn't show up. Not unusual. He hated mornings, hated accountability more. My phone buzzed quietly under the table. Internal server read receipt, document opened, tag triggered, timestamp logged, game on, no fireworks, no alarms. Just the slow, careful thud of an internal protocol kicking into gear. See, companies like ours don't shout when there's a leak. They patch it in silence. And the people responsible? They usually don't notice until the ground's already caving in under their polished shoes. That morning, I answered emails. Updated one of our risk dashboards, gave input on a vendor transition plan like I hadn't just handed HR a bomb with a timer set for internal audit. The people who wrong you always expect noise, emotion, tears, rage. They never expect calm, which is exactly why it works. The room smelled like catered finger foods and desperation. It was the kind of event that made execs feel good about themselves, a recognition session with lukewarm applause, over-designed certificates, and enough stage sincerity to make a sitcom blush. They held it in the big conference hall on the 17th floor. Lights dimmed just enough to make PowerPoint slides look important. HR had gone all in on the theme. Fake snow in the corners, pine-scented diffusers, someone actually wore a Santa hat. I showed up in charcoal gray and didn't clap once unless absolutely required. We all knew the drill. They call names, say a few empty words about teamwork and dedication, then hand over an envelope like they're giving you the key to the city instead of a legally obligated check. Most people grinned like kids on a school stage, shaking hands they used to talk shit about in Slack. My name was supposed to be in the M's. I was wedged between Madison from procurement and Nate from systems. Madison went up, hugged the CEO, cringed, and walked off with her certificate and bonus envelope like she'd just graduated valedictorian. Nate followed. They even played light music when he walked up. It felt choreographed. Then came the pause. The CEO flipped the page on the folder, blinked, frowned slightly. No announcement, no envelope. My name was skipped like a scratched CD, and I watched every eye in that room shift in slow motion. A few colleagues turned toward me. The whisper hush started, just enough noise to stain the air. Steve, my boss, laughed a little too loudly and said, "Oh, don't worry, we'll fix that later." His voice cracked halfway through, later. I stood, calm, polite. I adjusted my blazer and said loud enough for the front row to hear, "No worries, I already flagged it for reconciliation." And that was the moment. You could see it, the visible shift in the room. People straightened. The ones who knew me looked nervous. The ones who didn't were now curious. The CFO, sitting 3 chairs from the CEO, stiffened like someone had replaced his bloodstream with concrete. He stared down at his watch like it had something useful to say. And Janice, our quiet, meticulous compliance officer, she was in the corner with her legal pad, pen stilled mid-note. Her eyes didn't move. Not once. They didn't need to. The session rolled on, but it felt brittle now. The applause had that strained, uneven quality, like everyone could hear something cracking under the surface, but didn't want to name it yet. I sat, hands folded, not touching the lukewarm cider at my table. It wasn't humiliation, it was setup. Because now the CEO knew something was off, even if he didn't know what. Steve was already sweating under his festive tie. And Crane? He couldn't get out of there fast enough once it wrapped. I saw him duck into the hallway before the closing remarks even finished. And I saw who followed him. Janice, clipboard in hand. Same expression she always wore when she reviewed non-compliance logs. Mildly bored, thoroughly lethal. I didn't need a scene. I needed gravity to do its work. And it was working. The email hit at 9:06 a.m. sharp. Subject line, temporary suspension of bonus disbursements. Every monitor in the office lit up like a synchronized heart attack. You could feel the shift, like oxygen had been yanked out of the HVAC system. People froze mid-keystroke, forks halfway to mouths in the break room. Conversations died mid-sentence. Then the real panic began. I watched the chaos roll in from my seat near the window. Group chats popped off like fireworks. One thread had nearly 87 unread messages in 5 minutes. Is this about Michelle? Someone typed, then immediately deleted it. I still saw it. Screenshots are forever. The email was formal, sterilized, and clearly drafted by someone with a law degree and a fear of litigation. It stated that all year-end bonus disbursements were on hold, pending an internal audit to ensure accuracy and compliance, and that manual overrides would be reviewed on a case-by-case basis. Manual overrides. They used the phrase. That wasn't just a glitch being audited. That was a choice being investigated. I didn't flinch. I didn't gloat. I didn't even blink. I simply pressed Ctrl+P and printed the email, slid it into a sheet protector, and filed it in my now well-fed blue binder, right behind the performance review parade agenda and the override authorization. I labeled the tab, Escalation Step 2, Systemic Pattern. HR tried to do damage control that afternoon with an emergency Teams call. Half the company joined, half pretended to have connectivity issues. The head of HR, Sandra, bless her heart, tried to keep the tone light. This is just a standard protocol to ensure transparency before year-end reporting, she said. Yeah, sure, and I'm the Queen of England. Someone unmuted by accident and let out a very audible bullshit, which earned a dozen silent camera-off laughs. But me? I just sat there, not a word, not a smile, not a single hint that the bomb everyone was trying to defuse had come from my desk. After the call, I checked LinkedIn, not for fun, for patterns. And there it was. Michael Crane's executive assistant, Amanda, had updated her profile. Open to work, actively seeking new opportunities. She'd been with him for 6 years. And she never posted anything publicly, ever. That little banner was a flare, and not just any flare, a corporate distress signal. She knew, or at the very least, she'd seen enough to want off the ship before it sank. By lunchtime, I overheard whispers in the hallway about expense accounts and non-standard allocations. I kept walking, carrying my tablet and coffee like it was just another Monday. Because the secret to surviving these moments is to act like you've been here before, even when you're the one pulling the strings. And the thing is, the board definitely saw the memo too. Because Janice? She had escalated it. She'd CC'd the Risk Oversight Committee again, this time with attachments. And when you involve risk oversight twice in 4 business days, things don't go back to normal. They can't, and they won't. Thursday morning, 6:43 a.m. My phone lit up with a blocked number, vibrating against the nightstand like it had something urgent to confess. I stared at it for a few rings, then picked up, voice low and flat from sleep deprivation and strategic caffeine withdrawal. Michelle Thompson? The voice asked. Formal, clipped, male. Yes. This is Jenna Reyes on behalf of the Compensation Committee. The board would like to meet with you this afternoon, 2:00. Not a request, not even a pretend invitation, just a summons masked with etiquette. I didn't ask who would be in the room. I didn't need to. I just said, understood, and hung up. By 9:00 a.m., I was in the office, unreadable as ever, sipping coffee and moving through my morning workflow like the entire building wasn't silently pulsing with audit paranoia. Word had gotten around. The bonus freeze was still in effect. Rumors now included everything from offshore accounts to the possibility that someone had funded a personal ski trip with team incentives. I knew most of it was noise, but the system was rattling, and I could hear every screw coming loose. I spent the late morning prepping, not because I needed to, but because I like my receipts sharp. I updated the binder, added page numbers, a short summary sheet, cross-referenced email headers, redacted sensitive, non-pertinent info. I printed 2 more copies of the override authorization email. One for them, one for legal. Originals stayed with me. At 1:58 p.m., I walked into the 21st floor boardroom. Frosted glass, polished chrome fixtures, that expensive silence you only hear in rooms where decisions get made above your pay grade. Except today, that hierarchy had a crack in it. 3 members of the board sat across the table, not executives, actual board. A man in a gray suit I recognized from last year's shareholder report, a woman who used to run audit for a federal agency, and another man with a legal pad, pen already in motion. Beside them sat outside counsel, sharp gray eyes, striped tie, no small talk. "Thank you for joining us," the woman said first. "We're here to clarify a discrepancy you flagged." I placed the binder on the table. "It wasn't a discrepancy," I said, calmly flipping to the relevant tab. "It was a diversion." I passed the folder forward. No dramatics, no performance, just data. The lawyer leaned in, adjusted his glasses, and spoke for the first time. "Do you have a copy of the override authorization email?" I opened a side folder, slid out a plastic sleeve, and handed him both versions. Original with metadata, the printout, time-stamped, signed. He blinked once and nodded. "Thank you." The rest of the meeting was quiet, controlled, surgical. They didn't ask why I hadn't come to them sooner. They didn't ask what I wanted, because they already knew this wasn't about retaliation. It was about integrity, about optics, about how deep the damage went, and how fast they needed to cauterize it before it infected the shareholder letter. The woman leaned back, brows furrowed. "Is there anything else we should be aware of?" I looked at her evenly. "I've only brought what's verifiable. The rest is your department's job to uncover." Translation: I gave you the map. Dig your own graves. They didn't argue. They didn't dismiss me. They thanked me, and that was when I knew the power dynamic had shifted. I didn't need to storm out. I didn't need revenge. I had something better: accountability and a front row seat. Friday started with a ping, not a bang. My phone buzzed at 7:02 a.m. Push notification from my bank. Deposit received $10,000, NARS even. The memo field read, Q4 performance bonus plus adjustment, just like that. No apology, no explanation. But the number said enough. My original $7,500 plus a tweet $500 we got caught surcharge. I stared at the screen for a beat, then set the phone down and exhaled. Not a sigh. Something quieter. Final. When I walked into the office, it was different. Not visibly, not at first, but the air had changed. The usual chatter in the break room had evaporated. People huddled in corners, whispered too loudly near the copier. One of the VPs looked like he hadn't slept. And Steve? Nowhere to be seen. By 9:17 a.m., the first formal memo hit inboxes. Subject: Organizational updates, executive transitions. Michael Crane, CFO, placed on administrative leave pending further review. Stephen Burke, Director of Operations, reassigned to strategic advisory role effective immediately. Both statements were wrapped in corporate fluff. Realigning with growth initiatives. Deep appreciation for years of service. Continued collaboration in transition. But the subtext was clear as glass. They were gone. Swept out in the quiet, like old leaves before the shareholders could smell the rot. At 10:01 a.m., a second message followed. Subject: Bonus review complete. Payroll reissue. Everyone's year-end bonus had been reevaluated, disbursements corrected, documentation updated. We take compliance seriously, it read, 3 times in 2 paragraphs, like repeating it enough could make it true. I didn't say a word, just clicked print. 3-hole punched both emails and slid them into my binder. Behind the audit notes, behind the copy of Crane's override request, behind the photo I'd snapped of Steve's face at the recognition event when I said I'd flagged the issue for reconciliation. I was halfway through updating a dashboard when someone left an envelope on my desk. No name, no return address, just folded once, sharp and precise. Inside, a handwritten note on firm stationery. Adjustment processed. Thank you for your discretion. No signature, no title. But I recognized the handwriting. It was Sandra's from HR, the only person in this whole circus who looked me in the eye through every stage of the storm. She passed my desk an hour later. No small talk, just a nod. The kind you give someone who didn't shout. didn't threaten, just pressed send at the right time with the right receipts. Others avoided me, some out of guilt, some out of fear, a few out of sheer embarrassment that they ever laughed at Crane's jokes or looked the other way when Steve scheduled boys-only brainstorming sessions at the cigar bar. But I wasn't there for their redemption. I was there for the systems. And the systems had moved, quietly, decisively, in my direction. For the first time in months, the numbers matched the truth. And for once, that was enough. The invitation came on Tuesday, printed, hand-delivered, no calendar ping or email trail, just a white envelope placed gently on my desk by a junior aide who didn't say a word. That alone told me enough. This wasn't a discussion. It was a decision already in motion. The letter inside was brief. One sentence. The chair would like a brief word this Thursday at 10 a.m. No department, no subject line, no please advise. It read like a chess move. When I arrived on the 24th floor, the receptionist didn't ask my name, just offered coffee, gestured toward the double doors, and pressed a button to buzz me through. I walked in and found the board chair standing alone by the window, back to me, overlooking the skyline like he'd personally stacked the buildings. He turned and gave the kind of nod that says both, "Thank you for coming," and "We've already decided." "Michelle," he said, gesturing toward the chair across from him. "We've been reviewing systems and gaps." I didn't speak, not because I didn't have words, but because I'd learned, finally, that silence is sometimes the loudest answer in the room. He reached into a drawer, pulled out a manila folder, and slid it across the table between us. Inside, a single-page offer. New title, Full Oversight of Internal Compliance Modernization, Direct Reporting Line to the Board, Budget Autonomy, Cross-Departmental Access Authority. No middle management bottlenecks, no Steve, no Crane, just a clean slate. I scanned it once, then again, not to fact-check, just to let the moment settle. I recognized the framework. I'd helped design half of the workflows they were now handing over. Only difference now? My name was at the top. "This position's been open for a while," he said, as if reading my mind. 6 years, actually. We've had consultants, temporary appointments, none of them lasted. I looked up. "And now?" I asked. "Now we know who's earned it." I didn't smile, didn't make it sentimental. I pulled the pen from my blazer pocket and signed it right there, clean and precise. He reached out and shook my hand. "We'd like to announce it quietly," he said. "You'll have full discretion to build your team, draft new protocols, reopen any internal flags you feel were unresolved." I nodded once. "Good," I said, "because I already have a list." There was no toast, no confetti, just a closed folder, a steady heartbeat, and a sense that for once the reward matched the work. I left the room and rode the elevator down in silence. No one saw me walk out, but they would feel the difference soon enough. Same snowflake lights, same grand piano in the corner, same overpowering cinnamon candles that clung to your clothes for days. It was the annual holiday party again, like déjà vu wrapped in velvet and forced smiles. But this time, the energy was different. Lighter, sharper, like the air had been filtered. There were new faces at nearly every department table, fresh hires, new directors, younger analysts who didn't yet know the politics that had once slithered beneath this room's polished surface. And the familiar ones? They walked softer now, not out of fear, but because they'd seen what could happen when the right person says nothing until it's time. The tree was taller this year, strung with white lights instead of the gaudy color bulbs Steve used to insist on. Steve, of course, wasn't there. Neither was Michael. No one said their names. Their absence was its own kind of ornament, hung heavy but silent, like a lesson no one dared forget. Midway through the event, the board chair stood near the front, glass raised, voice steady. "To those who speak softly," he said, letting the room settle before adding, "and carry audits." Laughter rippled, nervous for some, knowing for others. I stood near the back, close to the windows, same spot I stood the year before, only now the tension had been replaced with something colder and cleaner. Resolution. A junior staffer from HR, someone I barely knew, sidled up beside me, drink in hand. She glanced over with that curious smile people wear when they're too new to understand the whole story. "So," she asked playfully, "did you get your bonus this year?" I looked over my glass, nodded once. "Right on time." She smiled, said something about hoping she did too, then melted back into the crowd, unaware that the system she now relied on had been rebuilt line by line to make sure she didn't get quietly robbed like I had been. The music swelled behind me, jazzy, inoffensive. Someone clinked their fork on a champagne flute for a speech. I didn't listen. My eyes had wandered across the room to a new installation near the exit. Small, brass, tasteful, a plaque. I walked past it on my way out, coat over my arm, gift bag untouched. The plaque read, "Integrity lives in the details." It didn't have my name. It didn't need to. Everyone who mattered already knew who made sure it got there.